Hey guys, welcome to my first drive video on this BMW XM. I actually got behind the wheel of one of these in pre-production form about a year ago. If you missed that video, there's a link to it up here. But this is the finished product. It's the real deal, if you like. I'm out here in beautiful sunny Arizona and I'm here for the launch of this car and the M2. It was a 2-day launch, but I'm only here for 1 day, and I must admit I've spent most of the day filming my M2 video, which will be coming to the channel very soon. And I've literally got this car for an hour before the sun disappears. And I thought, you know what, let's just take it out and talk about what it's like behind the wheel, because this is an M car. It's not just a BMW, and therefore it should drive and feel like an M car, or at least have some of that DNA. And I seem to remember that pre-production car being very, very impressive. So let's start the drive off-road, because, well, it is essentially an SUV and it's got an MX drive system, so it should handle this very well. Anyway, that's enough of the off-road section. Let's get back on the road. First thing to talk about is the fact that it is a hybrid. It's the first M hybrid, and it's the running gear that we're going to see in cars like the incoming M5, or the next generation of M5. So under the bonnet we have a 4.4 litre V8 twin turbo, the new S68 variant, so the same engine that was in that X7 M60i that I tested a few months ago, and that's paired up to a full hybrid system, not a mild hybrid system. And in fact, with electric only, which we're in at the moment, this has 197 horsepower. And when you combine the combustion engine with the electric power, it has a maximum output of 653 horsepower. So that's a lot of power, and 800 newton meters of torque. As far as I know, that's the most torque that any BMW has ever produced, because cars like the M5 Comp, M8 Comp, M5 CS, they were always limited at 750 newton meters. So this has got a bit more torque, but it needs all of that power and all of that torque because it weighs about 2.7 tons, which is just ludicrous. In terms of pricing, well, base price on these are £148,000 in the UK, which is a lot of money, but they come with a lot of standard equipment and there's not many other options to tick. And I suppose when you compare it to cars like the Bentley Bentayga or Lamborghini's Urus, it actually, dare I say it, looks like pretty good value. In terms of styling and aesthetics, well, it just doesn't do it for me, especially this one. It's very garish. It's red with gold bits all over it, and I'm sure maybe this will appeal in certain markets. It is targeted at places like the US and China. I'm sure the Middle East are going to buy loads of these, and so maybe this sort of color combination will suit their needs and might tick their boxes. But for me, it's just a bit too much. I think this car is already shouty enough, and the last thing it needs is a red and gold paintwork. But at least inside it's fairly subdued. In fact, whilst we're talking about the interior, well, that's where this car really is special. These seats are very much like the M5 competition seats, just slightly different stitching, maybe a slightly higher grade of leather, but otherwise pretty much those seats, which isn't a bad thing because they're massively adjustable, massively comfortable and supportive enough, especially for a car like this. But where this car differs from, say, an X5M or an X6M is in the rear. Oh, it's really nice back there. They did stress and talk about that a lot with the pre-production car, but that particular car wasn't ready in the rear and we weren't really allowed to sit back there or play around with it. But I have to say, they've done a fantastic job back there. And unlike the X5 or the X6, where if you jump in the back you feel like you're a bit shortchanged, this car, well, it's like a 7 Series back there. It's honestly, that's the biggest compliment I can give it. They'll probably say it's more premium than a 7. I don't think it is, but it's as good and as comfortable. The rear seat's got a lovely angle to it, just feels great. And with my driving position, I fit back there with acres of legroom, and yeah, not a stress whatsoever. It's really, really nice place to be. So as a 4-seater luxury car, it's really, really impressive. In terms of boot space, I don't have the exact stats on me, but I can tell you, because of all the hybrid system, etc., the actual boot shelf or floor is very high. So it's not the biggest boot in the world, and I'll guess that an X5 has got a bigger boot, but like I said, it's more about the luxury and the experience. It really is a lovely car to just cruise along in. We're in hybrid at the moment. As I say, I don't think that 4.4 is even fired up. We've just been using electrical energy. But when we do press the right buttons or put our foot down on the floor, you can hear it come to life. So what I'm going to do is move the drivetrain up to Sport Plus. So we've got the setup menu like you have in all M cars. You've got lots going on here. We've got drivetrain, we've got engine recovery. So essentially when I come off the throttle, how much regen is it going to give the batteries? That's on max at the moment. We've got chassis setup, 3-way M adaptive suspension. We've got steering, we've got brakes, and we've got adjustable MX drive. But it won't go into 2-wheel drive, which is a shame, because this thing would do absolutely massive burnouts, I'm sure. But we got 4-wheel drive sport, and 4-wheel drive sand. Maybe I should have used that when we were on the sand a bit earlier on. But yeah, let's ramp this up to Sport Plus. Let's put that over into manual. Let's stiffen the chassis right up to Sport Plus. I'm sure that's not the setting you'd have if you lived in the UK, but these roads out here are relatively smooth. Steering will leave in comfort because it's already got enough weight behind it. Brakes up into sport, and let's go 4-wheel drive sport. We need to deactivate traction control to do that. And there we go. And then back down here again to set up. So many buttons. There's a hybrid button down here as well, which I'm sure will configure how much regen and everything else you can get from this car. I'm sure you could spend a week in here playing around with all the settings, etc. I just don't have that time. I just want to give you my first impressions on this car. So let's put it into 4-wheel drive sport now. Use these lovely carbon paddles. So this is the same wheel that you get in the M2, the M3 and the M4 with the lovely carbon paddles. Okay, into third. Oh my goodness. It's really, really quick. And the dials, well, they've got not only the rev counter in red, but I can also see how much electrical energy I'm using. So there's a blue energy line that comes up because that's the initial pickup. That comes in immediately, just like an EV. Can you hear those pops and cracks from the exhaust? But remember, this is an American spec car, so it's not cluttered up with OPF filters. So the UK spec ones, or most of the cars in Europe, aren't going to sound quite this good. And I'm sure a lot of that sound is also being piped around the cabin, but so fast. In fact, BMW claim this will do the 0 to 62 sprint in 4.3 seconds. And I know people today that have had time to test it on GPS, and it does it in about 4 seconds flat, which is no surprise. That means that it's not quite as quick, in my head anyway, as an X5M, and it doesn't feel quite as fast. It is 200 or 300 kilos heavier. Much of that is the hybrid system, but it just doesn't feel quite as punchy as an X5M. But it's not far off, and I could be wrong because that's just my muscle memory, if you like speaking, and not my scientific facts and figures. Let's find a twisty road and just see what it's like down that. In fact, there's a really good road just down here where I took the M2 along earlier on. This car might be a little bit big for it, but at least we can see what happens when we start to hustle. Remember, Joe, this is close to 3 tons with you behind the wheel and the boot full of camera equipment. It feels so wrong. Incredible grip. I mean, it's unreal. it stays completely flat and stable through everything. I think it'd be really hard to figure out where the limit is in this car, because there's so much stuff going on underneath my bum, essentially on the chassis. Loads of electronics, constantly adjusting things. I remember in the pre-production car you could actually feel and hear a few things going on. In this, well, you don't know it's going on, but you do know it's going on, if that makes sense, because it just shouldn't be doing what it's doing. Is this giving me the same M thrills that I would get in something like an M2, M3, M4? Of course it's not. Is it comparable to an X5M or an X6M? I don't think it is quite. You can feel that extra weight, and you can also feel all of the magic that it's doing below me, but that kind of takes away from some of the driver involvement and driver engagement that even cars like the X5M still have. So I think if you're after a big, let's say, luxury SUV, then the X5M or X6M are still going to be more capable and more fun down a twisty road. But where this car's magic trick is, it's kind of the Jekyll and Hyde of it. So if we knock everything back into comfort, the drivetrain, which should knock it back into electric only, and the chassis back into comfort, well, that's where this car really excels compared to any other M car, especially the X5M and the X6M, which have very stiff rides, especially in the UK, where we can only get the competition trim, which basically means stiffer spring rates. And when you've knocked all that back, well, this car, at least on these roads out here in Arizona, feels fantastic. This particular press car is riding on 23-inch wheels, which are optional. They come standard with 21-inch wheels. In fact, there's not many options you can go for with these cars. I went on the configurator before I came out here. I think you can do like BMW sound system, which was about $6,000 or something, 22-inch wheels or 23-inch wheels, and a few paint options, a tow bar I think as well, and that's pretty much it. So even a fully spec'd up one of these, like this particular car, probably looking at about £160,000, which again is a lot of money, but it's not compared to some of its rivals, let's say. Something that I'm not the biggest fan of is when you're in hybrid and we're using electric power now, if I add a bit more throttle and it wakes up the 4.4, the transition is not the smoothest. I wish that could be a little bit better when that barks into life. What is my verdict on BMW's XM after spending literally 45 minutes behind the wheel? Well, I have to say, if you can get past its challenging looks, which I personally couldn't, I think it definitely has a place. And if you're looking at buying yourself a super high-end, luxurious SUV that happens to be very, very fast, then this kind of makes sense. It does the comfort thing very well. These seats, as we talked about, are exceptional. The seats in the back are as good, if not better, and I think that's really important, and something that a lot of cars don't have, or a lot of luxury SUVs. Cars like the Urus, cars like Audi's RSQ8, the X5M, all of those, they do suffer in the back. Okay, Bentley's Bentayga is maybe very nice, but this, I would say, is even better. So if luxury and premium feel is the top of your list, then this is the car to go for. Also, you've got so much technology rammed in here, it's unbelievable. Like I said at the start of the video, I could probably spend a week in here figuring out how to use some of it. When you do take it down a really nice road and expect it to turn into an M car, I don't think it really does. It has a few little issues. First one being its weight. It's very capable, and I'm sure from point A to point B it's as quick as many things out there weighing almost a ton less, but it's just not that exciting whilst doing so. And I think that all comes down to weight, because the heavier cars get, the less feel they have, and yeah, they're just not that exciting. But that's not to say that this car isn't massively capable in that respect. So yeah, I think they're going to probably sell lots of them out here in the Middle East, in China, undoubtedly. And although at £150,000 or 160 odd, how this one's spec'd, sounds like a lot of money, but there's an awful lot of car and metal work for your money. So am I impressed with it? Yes, I am. Should it have been labelled up as an M car? My personal opinion on that, no. It's very capable, but to me it maybe would have sat better as a sort of halo BMW car and not a BMW M car. And I know that might ruffle some feathers at BMW M, but that's just my own personal and honest opinion. But it is a good test bed for the up and coming hybrid engine, if you like, that's going to be in the incoming M5. And I think if they fix a few things like how they integrate and how they work together, then that's definitely something to look forward to. But I've already heard rumours that the new M5 is going to be close to 2.5 tons, which is a little bit sad, but hey, that's the way the world's going, EV and hybrids, because apparently big 2.5, 3 ton vehicles are saving the planet, and that's definitely not BMW's fault. That's what they're being forced into building and doing. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully I haven't sounded like too much of a cynical old man. I'm just giving you my honest opinion. As I say, I think this car is gonna tick a lot of boxes for a lot of people out there. It's just not my sort of M car, but I am massively impressed by the ride quality, the luxury, the comfort, the build quality. You know, it's a real bit of kit. You can see where every single penny of your money has gone. As the sun disappears behind the beautiful scenery, I'm going to sign off and say goodbye. I hope this video wasn't too rushed and made some sense. I've had very little sleep and I've been running around like a crazy person all day, and the B-roll that's attached to this obviously isn't this particular car, but that's my only option. Until the next video, take it easy and I will see you then. Cheers.